And we are off. I want to talk slow. We're going to do some introductions as everybody rolls in to our Wednesday webinar here. We're excited. My name is Dean Cottrill. I'm EVP of Brokerage and Team Consulting here at T360. I've got my trusty Lisa Picardo, my sidekick, with us here. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning, Dean. Great to see you.
Yeah, good morning to you. On the East Coast, it's good afternoon, and that'd be a good afternoon to you, Jonathan, correct?
Yes. Good afternoon, East Coast. Good to see you.
Awesome. Good to see you as well. And we're excited to have Jonathan here with us. Jonathan has worked with us here at T360, he's a founder of Nest Realty. And Jonathan, I want to ask you for additional color that you might want to provide to those that are watching this video or watching it live here on LinkedIn or wherever you might be watching it live. But Jonathan has actually supported us a great deal in our T3 Fellows program. He runs an incredible organization. They're extremely strong in some areas, specific areas of our business that I'm going to strong in all areas, but one specific area we're going to be touching on and talking about. And that's why we're so happy to have him here with us. So Jonathan, any additional color you want to give to everybody who's watching about Nest, about yourself?
Sure, real quickly, and I've been part of the Fellows program since day one, and it's an exceptional program, and I'm excited to continue to be involved in it. I'm Jonathan. I founded Nest Realty in 2008. We are a kind of like boutique franchise based in Virginia. We have 21 offices in 5 states. We have about 500 agents, and we did about 2.6 billion collectively with all of our franchisees and franchise agents last year. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of context of kind of scale and geographic location. Is kind of mid-Atlantic Southeast is where we are.
Okay. Excellent, Jonathan. Thank you. And again, thank you for being here. So let's start in the beginning, Lisa and Jonathan. The elephant in the room, of course, and one of the things I had a call with Jack Miller yesterday and Tinas, and we're talking. And, oxygen in the room is currently being taken up by what? The lawsuits, correct? Everything going on the buyer broker side. So that's the elephant in the room. So we're going to spend a few minutes on this right now, just to touch on it. But that's not this webinar. This webinar is as leaders, the leaders that are watching this, that see this video here, we're going to be talking about what is already starting to happen across the country that you can take advantage of, that you can be looking around that corner and being ready and taking advantage of opportunities that are coming our way, that frankly, they're already coming our way. We want to make sure you're not losing sight of that, and then get your sales professionals engaged in areas to help generate business. So going back to the buyer agency side, our in-house specialist up on everything in the buyer broker space is Lisa Picardo. Lisa, anything you want to share specifically about buyer agency that currently going on in that area? I know that's a big question, right?
Yeah, so I'm keeping busy for sure. We're doing a lot of buyer brokerage assessments for companies where we really dive into all of their business. And that has been eye-opening. I mean, we look at everything from their effective commission rate on their overall and their buy side and list side. We look at their website, their buyer brokerage presentation, what forms that they're using. We also look at their policy manuals and ICA. All of that needs to be updated, right? So as leaders, start to really pay attention to that and make sure that your policies are in alignment with what you need. I mean, if you want a third party to look at that, we do that. The other thing that we're doing a lot of is a presentation on adapting to shifting compensation for buyer brokerage. And we've been delivering this, what now, Dean, I think for 9 months that we've been delivering this, but we continually update it. So of course we have the latest, greatest version post NAR settlement and what that means. And it's very tactical. It's great for agents. We give them, we talk about the importance of promoting their value proposition. We go through objection handling, a bunch of other information, objection handling for both the buyer and the seller. So that's a great presentation that we're delivering both virtually and in person. So we're here for that. And I think, the one other thing I just want to mention, because I know today we're going to talk a bit about listings, is that, I see a lot online where people are like, just get more listings, get more listings. Well, I mean, that's great, but the reality is when we do an annual business review with clients and we look at how much of their business was on the buy side and the list side, I mean, there's a lot of companies and teams out there where 70% of their business is on the buy side, right? a really strong listing company is still only at 50%, right? So that means that the other 50% of your business is still coming from the buy side. So you need to be strong in that as well. I mean, we are going to talk today about listings and both spear marketing and geo farming on that, but I want everybody to keep that in mind. I mean, it's rare, like, that we see above 53% on the list side. Like, I mean, that would be never probably, right? Dean, wouldn't you guess?
It's very rare. It's very rare. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to us right now, listening to us talk, are like, boy, I wish I was there. I wish our business was more positioned on that side. Wouldn't you agree?
So anyway, so I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, we are deep in the weeds with everything on the buy brokerage side. So we're here to help you. But let's dive into the topic.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're going to dive in. And Jonathan, as we go through this, as you can tell, and you've been on these before, you have a thought, want to add something, let me know. I'm going to come to you, of course, on certain things, but feel free to speak up if you feel want to add anything there. And as Lisa said, if you do have some interest in us having come in and help and support you, let us know. I'm going to move right into the topic that is today's call, and that is to start looking around the corner. Right now, I was talking before we went live here with Jonathan and with Lisa, and talking about the current listing inventory. If you look across the country, as of 2 days ago, the current listing inventory, active listings, is up 25% year over year. So we have over 25%, we have 25% more listings active today than we did a year ago. We're also seeing, because of that, across the country, an increase in sales units. And frankly, we feel it's a condition of more inventory being on the market. And one thing too, we're seeing prices really flat. So that's, that's some of the numbers thrown out there. But my point in this whole thing to share with you is the active inventory is higher. What are you doing actively in your organization to engage your agents, to engage your sales professionals and the leaders that you work with, depending on your size of your organization, to inspire them to get out there and shake the trees for people who are putting their home on the market more now this year than last year? And also, we're going to get into sphere of influence. So I'm going to grab the screen. I'm going to pull up some slides. I want to talk a little bit about geo farming. We do some exercises in this area to take a deep dive. We're going to give you the highlights of this. And I encourage you, and I heard this this morning as well on another podcast, basically, is, hopefully webinar will have you start thinking and processing in your mind things that frankly you probably have done before, but you've moved away from. So you're probably going to revisit some of these, right, and utilize the new technologies. And how can you take better advantage of pinpointing people who might want to sell, right? So that's the whole idea here. Get you really thinking and strategizing. Put that plan out there of how you're going to do this, and then act. And that's the goal here that we have, is think, then plan, and then act. So let me grab the screen.
Let me hear from Jonathan for a sec too.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I mean, I don't really have too much to add to that, but I totally agree with everything that you're saying. So, but I've got some points later that I'll dive in on for sure.
Great.
Okay. So we look at, let me make sure I pull up the right thing. So this is a keynote that we have, but a couple of things on geo farming that would highlight. And this is not, again, this isn't rocket science, right? But it's just creating a plan, systemizing it, making it easier. As we know, with your organizations, if you make things easy for your sales professionals, more of them will do this. Whether you're going to put, and this is something I'll talk to Jonathan about as well, I'd love to hear his thoughts. Sometimes if you put things in place and have it all done, your agents will pay for it. So this is not saying something like you're going to be spending all this money, right? You're not going to spend all this money, but if you do some of the legwork. So, talking about what is a geographic farm, what's the income that could be made? This is where you can really open up someone's mind, their eyes, their ears, and say, wow, there's a lot of money to be made here. Marketing and advertising, we'll talk about some things there and talk about some kind of implementation plan. I'm not going to dive too much into the weeds here, just because this is more of a flash webinar. I want to get you really thinking, but really consider in geographic areas, high turnover communities, something that's a manageable size, something that's too large, people are not going to go after. It's too much money. Price point, it could be a price point. They want to get into a higher price point. This is something Lisa and I work with our clients, because that is one of those 7 key areas of profitability, is the average price that you might have. And there might be markets and areas, subdivisions, for example, that you could pinpoint and go after. That's a higher price point to generate higher sales prices. geographic, clientele that work for your business model, accessibility, long-term commitments. That's a long-term commitment. This is where, and I think this is the challenge that we find. I'm going to pause after this comment, guys. I'm curious, Lisa and Jonathan, anything you guys have in your personal experiences. But I personally find that people, it's hard for them to commit to a long-term investment. Yeah. This is something like, and I'll give you an example. I personally went through, and I was a geographic farmer. I had a farm of 5,000 homes that I built up over 3-4 years. And I was generating a ton of inventory listings from it, and inquiries and all that stuff. It was just a feeder to me and my business. It was awesome, but it didn't happen overnight. It took time. Lisa, what's your experience on agents committing to geographic farming, and what's that look like?
They don't, like, people just tend to like, let me just throw some stuff out there and see what sticks, right? And you have to, like, people will say, well, I did direct mail once, that didn't work. It's like, well, once doesn't work. I mean, you have to hit those people every single month, right? Or sometimes more than once a month. And you could actually do geofarming without direct mail, right? I mean, you just need to be at events, you need to be in, really entrenched in that community, right? As part of it. For a long time, for years.
Yeah, look, I'll jump in and piggyback off of that. I think that, one thing that I'll preface with all the topics that we're talking about today is it's, a lot of that we're doing is not AI. A lot of this is not AI, and it's not sexy, and it's really kind of going back to old school. And there's one, one thing that we have conversations with our agents really encouraging to do geographic farming and sphere marketing and things like that is, the world goes through cycles, and one of the cycles, and I'm not going to get into all the stats of it right now, but interestingly enough, vinyl records 25 years ago, people stopped buying them. Well, vinyl record sales are right now at an all-time high. Right now. There's a reason for that, right? That people are kind of getting back to the basics and appreciating patina and things like that, and that translates a little bit of what we're talking about. But I'll tell you that geographic farming and sphere marketing is not going to give instant gratification. Like, most people right now are used to instant gratification. So it is an investment that, as you talk with your agents about it, you've got to let them know, like, hey, you may spend $500 in this next mailer. Don't expect to see that, ROI immediately. So I'll say that.
Yep. And this is something as a leader. So now talking directly to you that's watching this webinar, high turnover communities. Do you know all the high turnover communities, and what is that turnover rate, and what are those average prices in that community? As an example, this is something I would encourage, and we're going to share with you real quick a map exercise that we encourage our clients to do, where you actually map out where your agents live, where the listings are that you sold over the last 12 months, as an example, and then where was the other business that took place that you didn't have anything to do with, and that is an eye opener of an experience. But by doing that math, you actually could, and I used to have all this, and when I would interview agents, whether they're experienced or new, and for retention discussions as well, I could lay out in a business discussion high turnover communities and how they're not taking advantage of where they live, and all these homes that have sold, things like that, or if it's a recruiting interview. So that's something to think about, is to really strategize. Go ahead.
Dean, piggybacking off of that. So our managing broker in one of our offices has a spreadsheet that he's built for geographic farming. And one of the factors that he talks about with agents that are looking into geographic farming is, what's the absorption rate of a single listing agent for sales within a certain community. So here's the example. Let's say there was 100 sales within a community, and one listing agent had 45 of them. Well, that may be a longer return on investment versus if there's a community that has 100 sales with 95 different agents being a listing agent. Yeah. So you look at an opportunity like that and say, I'm going in because there's not one dominant agent, and I'm more likely to be able to kind of penetrate that community and start to get listings. So that's something else to think about.
I think accessibility is another one. We talk about that, right? Like, so, I mean, a lot of agents want to get into some big private golf community or whatever, but unless you're really living there and, you're entrenched in that community, you're going to be limited as to what you can do in that private community.
Yeah, and you have a lot of personal experience running your company that was resort market, for example. A lot of the organizations or in resort or high price markets, things like that. So accessibility ties to that. Jonathan, excellent point from you as well on those numbers and on those statistics, and having that information is very helpful. One of the things when you guys, I would actually, one of the suggestions is look at your turnover rates, whatever the real big turnover rates, and then do a deep dive. And to Jonathan's point, you'll find the majority of the subdivisions will be like nobody has any lion's share of the business. It is very rare. This is something, going back to our earlier conversation about people are not willing to do a long-term commitment. You'll see that to be front and center. You also probably already know somebody that's in your company or that's in another company that's around you that owns markets, that owns a subdivision, owns something else. And that didn't happen overnight. That took time and energy. But this is where we're trying to get you to start thinking about how to proactively, not that you haven't thought about this before, again, but basically get it back on that front burner, thinking of how I can engage my sales professionals and really do some research on my end and be able to lead this charge and support this effort on people going out and getting out there.
One of the things that used to drive, well, it used to drive me crazy is when you walked through a community and you don't see any of your company signs in that community, right? You're like, that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, that's that when you do the map exercise. So here's some, this is part of the marketing, demographic, farming, talked about different other things. Instead of geographic, you might be, certainly I want to go after high price, $1 million homes or higher. Or I want to go after this or that. So there could be some.
I want to go after the millennials that live in, more attached housing or townhouses, whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it ties to, you want to create an affinity, a connection between you and them, no matter what that might be, and that you're that expert in that marketplace. You talked earlier about, and this is coming back like the vinyl records, Jonathan, is the old mailers, right? We used to stand and throw things, getting those mailings coming back. That's actually something really to think about going back out. The average statistics, if you had our trends report, the average person lives in their home for 12.3 years. So that's the average turnover now for someone. We used to always say it was around 7 years, 7 to 10. Statistically, actually, it's 12.3 right now. So people are in homes longer, but that's part of this process, is going out, consistently reaching out, connecting with people that are in those homes. And then the idea is having that opportunity to sell it. Here, I'm going to jump into the map because this is I like this exercise here to show you about the map. And if I zoom in, you research an area, mapping the data, looking for areas of opportunity. This is recruiting retention. I'm actually going to dive into an actual map that was done by one of our clients down in Alabama. And if you see this, I'm going to zoom in here. So this is the highway here. That actually big green one there, that's a billboard. That's where the billboard was. That was he did some billboard advertisement. The green is where the agents lived. The blue purple color, that is where his business, his listings sales were over the last 12 months. And all the red is other business that took place. And this is where it's a real eye opener when you go and say, hey, someone's living here. You got an agent living here, an agent living there, and they're not doing any business. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? And you could have a little fun here. I'm having a little fun here myself. So with that, this is where this opens up. And this is one of that map is actually a great strategy to really open up people's eyes, because we're mostly all visual learners. And when you show them a map of opportunity and what they missed out on, people were, more hesitant to missing out on things than really trying to proactively go after things. So let me pause here to see your guys' comments on what we just shared. Anything from you, Lisa?
We've had a couple clients that are masters at geographic farming, and one in particular probably has a 40% market share in a community, and just is entrenched right in that community. I mean, the baseball field has her signs all over. I mean, like everything. And she has a large team, and so she hands off a lot of business to the team. So, I mean, I've really seen it successful, and I think, she's a strong leader, so that makes the difference, right? Again, like, I think we all think of geographic farming, well, that's the agent's job to do, but as Jonathan's going to speak to shortly, you need to help them, right? And lead them and show them the way, really, on how to do that. Jonathan, why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Do you want me to get into our program?
Yeah, let's do it. We're going to move this talk about Sphere and go that direction.
Yeah, so this relates a little bit to the geofarming, but just to let you know, we've got a program that we've been running at Nest Realty since 2012. It's called Friends of Nest. It's essentially a Sphere marketing program that we run on behalf of our agents, for our agents. And really the idea came of it about, and everybody's heard the stats, and the numbers kind of vary a little bit depending on where you see them, but you know, my favorite numbers in real estate, I could say, are 90, 74, and 22. And 90 is 90% of clients are happy with their agent after they work with them. But 74% of those agents never ever follow up with their clients after closing. So I'll say it again, 74% of agents never follow up with their clients after closing. And because of that, only 20 to 22% of those clients end up working with their agent again. Now, clearly there's other variables in there for that breakage over the course of time, but there's really no reason why if 90% of people are happy, that only 22% of them actually work with that agent again.
Let me just interrupt you. I had dinner with some friends last Thursday, and they own a number of different properties in the Longmont, Boulder area, right? I mean, not an inexpensive area, and they've owned a lot of properties over the last, dozen or more years and sold. And they recently had to list his mother's house, and they do not have an agent. Like, nobody's ever stayed in touch. Like, it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. We all know it, but we get, as agents, we get busy and we move on to the next client and, get distracted and kind of are working in the transaction of the moment. So years ago, I think it was 2011, we set up a program, and I'm not going to talk too deeply about this. We set up a program. We were kind of guiding our agents along the way to help them with Sphere marketing. And it was 1 week we'd meet and you get your CRM put together. And the next meeting, you would have your schedule for the year, and then you would design your first postcard. And then all of a sudden it got to be March and April, and people stopped showing up to meetings, and nobody followed through. And so we said, if our agents are going to do this, we're going to do it for them. So we built a program called Friends of Nest, and it's evolved over the year, where essentially now it's evolved to a program that 8 times a year we send out Sphere marketing pieces on behalf of our agents. It's built into our technology. It's a part of our ecosystem. Our agents hear me say the words Friends of Nest or the acronym FAWN, 9,000 times a year. We're pushing this. This is kind of a big part of our culture and who we are, but it works. And so over the years, we've evolved this program. And at this point in time, we're sending out, I think over the years, we've sent out almost 2 million pieces on behalf of our agents. We've got about a run rate of about 400,000 a year that we're doing right now as we've grown. And it's a process. And so
you do more than send out, right, Jonathan? You also do events for your agents.
We do,
and that's all part of it. I think we should talk a little bit more about that, right? It's more than just direct mail and email marketing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you just send a direct mail piece to somebody, it's only going to move the needle, but so much. But if you're doing a lot of things, and I've got my algorithm that I tell all of our agents for repeat and referral businesses, you have to be competent. Right? If you don't do a good job servicing your client and representing them, you're going to have a hard time retaining them as a client in the future. The second is you've got to communicate with them on a regular basis. This is Friends of Nest, mailers, text, phone calls, things like that. And then the third is community. Like, you've got to have a community and bring people together, and invite them to events and have face-to-face conversations with them. And look, nothing is foolproof, but we've found over the past 10, 12 years that we've been doing this and inviting people to different events and staying in touch with them, they're more likely to continue to work with their agent and use their Nest agent again and refer business to them. Look, I'll go back to what we talked about at the beginning here. We're in this new world of compensation. And, I'll ask this question, it's like, who's more likely to beat you up on compensation? A Zillow buyer, and we do lead gen and things like that, but a Zillow buyer or someone that doesn't know
you don't know,
or someone that has gotten, 24 very well-designed direct mail pieces over the year that you've invited to different events and, movies and local events and face-to-face, who's more likely to beat you up on compensation?
Probably and now's the time too, just to touch on what you just said about buyer agency, right? So now's the time, if you're companies that are doing sphere marketing for your agents, to be doing those newsletters and information about the value of a buyer agent, right? Like what they provide and the difference between unrepresented buyers and and represented buyers and all of that, right? Like the things that you do and buyer testimonials, all of that. We're talking about this, testimonial tree right now. It's focusing on buyer testimonials, right? There's another thing that people could be doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of your, within Nest, this is one of your strong, unique value propositions. It's something that it's something you can put your hat on, and it's unique. And it's not unique, but it's unique how well you do it and how much you do it and how simplified you've made it. So for that, and you have a tremendous amount of usage. You've got a lot of people who take full advantage of this program as well.
Mm-hmm.
We do. We're well over 90%. I think we're 93 to 95% adoption for this program, which for a opt-in program is almost impossible in the agent world. But we make it as easy as possible for them, and we're talking about it from our first recruiting conversation on through the entire year.
And I think I have seen actually some companies that this becomes a profit center for them as well, right? I mean, not a huge profit center, but it's not costing them money, right? Because agents are happy to pay somebody to do things for them, right? So that's an idea. We did have a question, Dean, earlier about geo-farming, about do you think that's something that a brokerage can do, or it really needs to be an agent? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I saw, Tom, thanks for the question. Good to see your name and appreciate the question. You can be both. You look at what Jonathan's done. When you lay that out, what he's done in his Friends of Nest, that's taken time to get there. But in a brokerage, you could be very proactive as a brokerage. I find I would suggest you do more of what Jonathan's done in the sphere space, the sphere of influence space, where in the geographic farming, where you support it, create interest and knowledge. One of the best ways to do that is help people market to where they live. Especially, I used to recruit a lot of new agents, for example, that came new to the business, and they're really at that point, they're hesitant to go out and tell people they're licensed because they really don't know what they're doing, and they don't want to look bad to the people they know. And so you can go to geographic farming into their neighborhoods. They know where they live. They know their neighborhood, to Lisa's earlier point. So that's where you go. But you definitely should research all the areas around your service area, your market service area. Have that information top of mind, know what the turnover rates are, what the average price is, all those things. So you could really calculate. And the calculation's this, and I got this from a CRS course, and it proved to be very accurate, frankly, on the low side for me, is within 12 to 18 months, if you go out into a primary geographic farm, primary market, whatever you want to call it, in 12 to 18 months, you'll have a 10% market share. So to Jonathan's point earlier about 100 listings being sold, that's 10, right? So then that's the math, and that's how it goes to the equation. But I think the company, I would share the knowledge, information, make it extremely simple, but offset the expense. Have them put some skin in the game. They got to be involved in it.
Yeah, and I think also, I don't think a company is going to get very far in geographic farming, right? It's a relationship business. It's an individual person. If you start throwing out the company logo in a community and just constantly, you can do a little bit of that. But I think that honestly, it's that agent or team or individual really for geographic farming.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So what do you think is like, what's a spend for, I've seen it all over the place, right? As far as like, is it a per agent spend? Like, what do you budget? How do you like determine what companies should spend?
Oh, as an organization, what you're going to spend?
Yeah, on sphere marketing.
Well, I'd be interested in Jonathan's opinion. Right now, there's so many variables on that question. Because how much money is
somebody asked that question. That's why they're asking, like, is there a per agent spend? And I think that would be really hard to.
I'll jump in and just answer kind of how we operate it. Is the agents have skin in the game. They pay on a per piece basis that they send out. We send out 8 pieces a year. You can do the math. It costs $20 per year. If you want to send out to a client, it's about $250 per person per mailer. And so to stay in touch with a client, and look, you know, I don't know where everybody is located, but the average home price in America is very expensive. In our market, you know, our core market, it's $560,000 is the kind of the median price of a home. And so you spend $20 a year following up with your client. To me, that's pretty inexpensive. Even if it increases your odds by, you know, by a little bit, that you're going to be able to retain that client the next time that they come around to sell. Even if they, you know, over 12 years, if you spent, you know, 12 times 20, $240 staying in touch with them,
Yeah.
seems like a pretty good investment to me. So, you know, but talking from a geofarming standpoint, it's, you know, completely different. But and we do, like Lisa said, we have events, and there's a cost share that the brokerage pays for a big chunk of the events, but there's a small cost share. I think it's smart to have agents pay for something, as we know from a psychological standpoint. If you give somebody something for free, they don't quite appreciate it as much. There's a cost share that we have in a lot of things that we do.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's in the brokerage world, we have a benchmark on marketing, and you think your gross commission income, about 7 to 10% should fall into that marketing bucket. That's in the green, and then we go yellow and red as you go away from that. But again, there's so many variables to that. It's a hard question to answer without really getting into your business model and knowing more about the business and what you're doing and your, you know, all the other variables that go into that. But that's just a generic 7 to 10% of GCI that reinvest into the marketing of the organization. So hopefully that gives some help or insight. Any additional questions come across?
No, there's a question that's off topic, but you can send me an email at lisa@t360.com. You can reach out to either one of us, lisa@t360.com or dean@t360.com, and we'll address that. So anything else to add?
Jonathan, thank you so much.
Yeah,
really appreciate you being on. You are a friend of T360.
Those of you, I wish, like Jonathan, I've seen Jonathan do an hour presentation on this. It is so impressive, everything that he does. And we had one client in our fellows program. Actually, we've had a few that have met, you know, that have rolled it out in the last year after seeing Jonathan's presentation. So, so it really is impressive. Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, one thing real quick, just to finish this up for those that are still actually holding on here, the 43 of you that are out there, I see, and the rest watching the video, is when you look at this is just a basic sphere marketing. Start with a calendar, January through December. Think of Hallmark. What are you doing? What marketing touch? Start this way. You might have one or two already in here. You might do an event, community event. You might do something like that. Think about that, and then have your agents add something in that equation as well. So just some food for thought, something to give you some insight into maybe something that you could start seeing something and laying out what that plan might look like for you and your organization. So with that, thank you all very much. Appreciate you joining us.
Good luck with your
Lisa,
spring market, everyone.
Yeah, go get those listings. Shake those trees. Jonathan, thank you so much. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, we'll see you. Hey, Chris, thanks so much, buddy.